Marketer of the Day, number 437. Fulcrum Investing and the State of Logic. How to stand out, get noticed, build the right team, and make great decisions with Kevin Van Eekeren. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Kevin Van Eekeren, and Kevin's websites are thestateoflogic.com and fulcruminvesting.com. So Kevin, how are things?
I am living the dream. How are you?
Super fantastic. Thanks for asking. So, what do you have going on these days, and what has you fired up?
Well, I took my first plunge into Twitter this weekend, and that was not a fun experience. I'm good without Twitter.
All right.
But beyond that, I've been really enjoying the podcast world and getting to interview not only with people like you, but also interview amazing people on my podcast as well.
Super great. So, what kind of interviews have you been doing? What kind of podcasts do you have set up?
So it's called The State of Logic, and the entire concept of it is to better people's ability to think through logic and fact. And I think that overall, us practicing that skill will make the world a better place.
All right, fair enough. I agree. So, how did you come up with that sort of setup for a podcast?
So I was on a SWAT team as a civilian back in 2006, and I was a logistics officer. So we get a call for a barricaded gunman. We go to the scene, and I happen to have my all-black German Shepherd in the back of the car. Just a personal dog, not a police dog or anything like that. And we do our thing. Turns out the guy was never there. About an hour into the operation, we had set up a perimeter, so if someone was in there, they couldn't get out, all that good stuff. And I let the dog out, let her go to the bathroom, gave her some water, and then put her back in the car. Now, I thought nothing of this at the time. Remember, even though I'm a civilian, I'm dressed just like every other SWAT person out there. Go home after 6 hours. Turns out the guy was never in there. No one was ever in there. We kicked in the door eventually and then went home. That night, I turned on the news, and there's a video of me taking the dog out of the car, and the reporter saying, we have confirmed sources saying that there is a hostage situation at such and such an address. The hostage taker has explosives, and so they brought in the bomb dog.
Jeez.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? That didn't happen. So I called the nightly news producer, finally got a hold of him, told him, hey, I'm the guy in the video. There was no explosives. That never happened. No one was ever in there. You need to run our tracks. You need to do something. And he literally laughed and hung up. And that's the starting point for me to say, oh, wait, maybe we can't trust that the mass media is out to inform us. Maybe they're more interested in selling ads, and sometimes there's cross-sectionality between them informing us and them selling ads.
Okay. So that's what the podcast is all about, and that's kind of the origin story there. And so what sorts of topics do you talk about on this thing?
Everything, from politics to business to farming. Kind of, obviously, I stay within my niche as best I can. And those are, and then criminal justice and guns in America are really the broadest spectrum of where we go. But we also talk about a bunch of things. I mean, today I had a celebrity, Rutledge Wood, on, who talked about cars and TV shows and that kind of thing. So it always changes. It's always different. But at the end of the day, we just reinforce that we're always using facts and logic to come to a conclusion.
Okay, so is this show you have going on, are you making money from it, or is it just a kind of thing as a hobby? What's the deal there?
Well, certainly it is meant to be monetized eventually. We are only 3 months in. So we have just over 40 episodes, and we're going to wait until we've gained serious traction before moving toward a model to monetize.
Okay, super great. So you're getting the content cranked out first, and then what else do you have going on besides that podcast?
I have a investment firm called Fulcrum Investing, and it's a family office where we invest in a very wide variety of startups nationwide.
Okay, and so what do people need to know about what you got going on? What do people need to know about Fulcrum Investing and all that?
Well,
Uh-oh, did we lose you? Hello.
Trying to get
Uh-oh.
um
Uh-oh, you're
as
back. Oh, hello?
yeah.
Oh, you cut out for about as soon as you started talking.
Oh, can you just edit it out and we'll start over
Yeah.
with that
Yeah.
piece? Go ahead. You want to start with that question again?
Yeah. So what do people need to know about Fulcrum Investing?
So Fulcrum Investing is a family office, and the concept is that we have a team of 7 other people who have different skill sets than me, so that we can have a deep understanding of whether that business is an investable business or not. Um, so the concept is we get our diligence done in 30 days, because waiting 120 days for an investment firm to tell you no is stupid. And we are very blunt, and we think that taking the kind of the nice version of Mr. Wonderful in Shark Tank is the best policy, because while we never want to hurt anyone's feelings, it's also important that we give people our honest assessment of the possibility of success for an idea or a company, so that hopefully they can either change things or move on to a different idea if those things need to happen, so that they don't go broke or whatever.
Okay, so do you have any sort of interesting stories about that where you kind of like looked at a deal or something and you said, let's be blunt about it, let's run it through our process?
Oh, absolutely. So I call it the ugly baby syndrome. And basically, I'm sure we've all had this experience where you hop on Facebook and you see that someone's had a baby, and they post a picture, and you're not entirely sure whether that is a baby or a new alien species that they've found. Um, but you're never going to say anything. There's no need. It's not going to do any good, and that makes sense. But much like babies, uh, startups are created by someone. They're funded by someone. It takes a ton of blood, sweat, and tears to make them work, and so people lose objectivity as to whether this is a good idea or not. And it is the investor's job to call an ugly baby when you have to, in order to be the best person you can be for that entrepreneur. And to give you an example, a few months ago, I had a entrepreneur come to me looking for to raise up to $1 million to start a newspaper, like a printed newspaper in 2017. And I had to tell him that I don't care what you're doing, this doesn't make sense. Um, the message was actually relatively well received, but it's one of those things where that is our job as investors as well.
Okay, great. So how does this usually work? Like, is it like this kind of situation where someone comes to you and they say, I have an idea, I need money? Like, how does this like investing situation work for you? Who does what exactly?
So basically, we're looking for companies that are post revenue. So they've already proven the concept. It's already making money usually, and typically we get a startup referred to us by another investor. At one point in time, when we were taking deals that anyone just wanted to send us an email, we would go through 30, 40, 50 a week, and that was just not sustainable. So now we only take in references from other investors, and we get through the process as quickly and painlessly as possible, again, to support the startup, so that they're not waiting 120 days and finding out that we're not going to invest in the end.
Okay, and do you have a favorite sort of startup that you like or usually gravitate to? Do you like the apps or the physical products, anything like that?
To be honest, my favorite investments range from the oddly the things that I don't like the most. One of my best investments is in the sports world. I watch no sports. Another pretty good investment is in the fashion world. If you look at me, I wear the exact same thing every day. I don't care about fashion. So it's all about finding the right entrepreneur to deliver that idea and execute on that idea. And that's what we really care about. We invest in people above all else.
Okay, so what's your thought process like when you're looking at those, like what people to invest to? I mean, do you have like a step-by-step process or a criteria or something like that?
Yeah, we have a very stringent process that involves psychological testing. It involves um, pretty deep analysis of not just the business, but how the business has grown under that entrepreneur, and then a questioning of what they see in the future, so we can make sure that they have the ability to look into the future, understand the trends, and then regulate the parts of their business that may not fit that trend in the future.
Okay, so how does the timeline on this sort of thing work? Like if so you're looking for these sort of startups that are post revenue, they have a proven concept, and then so if you kind of pull the trigger on this and you start to get the ball rolling on working something out, like what sort of things need to happen? Like multiple meetings, or like how do things kind of start going timeline wise?
Yeah, so it starts out with an introduction. Then we have them take the psychological testing. Then we do a phone call. And if all those things pass muster, then we move them into the process, which, as I said, takes 30 days. It's a total of five 30-minute calls and a few emails back and forth. And then 30 days later, we give them a solid yes or no.
And so, what are people usually looking for when they come to you? Like, is it just money, or they are looking to sell a business to you, or I mean, what are people looking for?
So typically, they're looking for smart money. So that is to say that they want my money, but they also want the support that comes with my money. And so that means that, whether they need marketing help or packaging or legal or whatever it is, we typically, if even if we don't have that expertise, we can help them find those experts in those fields to allow them to succeed more effectively.
All right, super great. So, are there any like sort of were there bumps in the road or any mistakes that you made early on when growing this company that you kind of like wish you knew back then?
Well, yeah, I went down the road. This is my fourth company that I've started. So I as I've done this, it's become routine for me to understand I don't know everything and I'm going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And so for this particular company, the biggest mistake I made was not understanding the landscape before I started. And that meant that I had a team in place for a year before I really started making great investments, because I had to get into the connections that I needed and understand the landscape better and all that.
Okay, and so as you're kind of making this business that you have more and more successful, do you have anything interesting planned for the future?
I really hope that I can develop my podcast into a media company. We're just testing the platform basically, and then we're looking to start consolidating both podcasts and other more recent developments in media, such as blogs and vlogs and that kind of thing, into a conglomerate.
So what does that mean exactly?
Basically, I'm just looking to find similar people out there that either haven't started or at the very beginning of starting their own YouTube channel, whatever it is. And if they hold the same beliefs as me about facts and logic, and kind of the truth is always the best thing to go by, then we're going to look to see if we can't work with them to invest in those so that they can be successful and we can own a piece of that channel.
Okay, and so as far as your company goes, like how much of it depends on you? Like, are you like super hands on, or do you have things like outsourced, systematized? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm involved in the overall, the big picture, and then obviously I'm the host. And so and same with my investment firm. I handle the big picture, and then I make the final decisions on investments. And I think that's the basic principle of any decently run business is the CEO cannot be working in the business. He has to be working on the business.
Okay, great. I agree. So you're the big picture and then also the face of things.
Correct.
All right, super cool. So great. So you have the podcast going, you have the investing going, and so I mean, is there anything in particular that you think that makes you stand out compared to anyone else, or if you see other people fail and you succeed, do you think there's anything specific that you guys are doing differently?
I think that remaining objective and having enough self-awareness to understand when you do have a bias and why you should remove yourself from that process when you do have a bias, for example, in investing, is absolutely critical. And that's the big thing that we focus on, and that has seemed to work very well for us.
Any interesting stories on that subject?
On remaining bias free,
Yeah, like in a situation where like maybe if you'd gone with your gut or you'd gone with what your feelings were wanted to do, it would have led you astray, but by kind of sticking to the formula, it was actually a better choice.
well, actually, I have the opposite story. When I first started, I didn't have a process, I didn't have a formula to follow. And those investments didn't do well. But the investments I've made since forming the formula have done very well. And so it's a very clear uh, line that I wasn't following a process and it didn't work. But now that I have this process, the vast majority of those investments are playing out well. So clearly we've developed a formula that works.
All right, well, super great. And so we mentioned that there's thestateoflogic.com, there's fulcruminvesting.com. Are there any other websites you want to throw out there or any places you think that people should go after they have heard our conversation today?
Definitely hit us up on all social media at the State of Logic, but that's about it.
All right, great. So the State of Logic, and then so the stateoflogic.com and Twitter, the State of Logic is that podcast where you talk about any topics that you have and kind of looking at things differently. And then fulcruminvesting.com, what will people find there again?
Basically, that's just giving a broad overview of how the fund works and what we're interested in. But also, we don't give away too much information because we have a very unique process and we try to keep that somewhat secret.
Okay, so if someone they go to fulcruminvesting.com and they want to reach out and contact you, what type of person should be contacting you today?
Well, as I said, we only take investment. We only look at investments that come from other investors. So that's why the public can reach out to us. There's certainly no harm, but 99 times out of 100, we don't take anything that doesn't come through an investor we already know and trust.
Okay, fair enough. So I mean, if someone comes to your website, what should they be doing at Fulcrum Investing in that case?
Well, really, that's the entire purpose of Fulcrum Investing. The website is just to let people know who we are, so that after we've engaged with them, it gives you a certain level of legitimacy. But that's really the only need for it.
All right, fair enough. So if people are listen to our talk today and they say, I learned a couple of things. I like the idea of going to some investor and reaching out. Do you have any like alternative place people should go if they want to get funding for their business?
Yeah, M25 Group out of Chicago is phenomenal, and the Warhawk Fund is phenomenal as well.
All right, super great. So M25 Group and the Warhawk Fund, and then don't forget to check out thestateoflogic.com. And just to kind of give us a little bit of a taste, what are the last couple of episodes, or what are the last few topics you guys tackled on that one?
Sure. So in the one that was released today, we talked to Rutledge Wood. He hosted the American version of Top Gear for 5 seasons, and he's an announcer for NASCAR and the Olympics and so many other things. And we just talked about what an interesting place the South is. He's from Georgia, and I flew out to do the interview with him. And then we went down the road of talking about politics and then cars. And we stayed on cars for a while because both he and I are pretty hardcore gearheads.
All right, great. So just all kinds of people on there, all kinds of topics. So that is thestateoflogic.com, and then follow them on Twitter, and then fulcruminvesting.com. So thanks so much, Mr. Kevin, for stopping by and just giving us like a lot of things to think about, a lot of interesting lessons, and just things that we all need to be doing in our business. And it's cool to kind of hear about how you took this initial frustration dealing with the media, you turned it into something that's kind of a creative outlet, and you're beginning to tie into these different things. So thanks for sharing these interesting stories and these interesting lessons with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and keep up the great work.
Want to listen to more fantastic Marketers of the Day? Subscribe to us at marketeroftheday.com/iTunes and browse past episodes at marketeroftheday.com.